A Ghostly Haunting in Grenhaven, chapters 18 and 19. Chapter 18. One Good Thing. Despite the wind and blowing snow biting at our faces, we didn't have any trouble locating the driveway in the deep snow. That's because all we had to do was follow the van tracks back to the house. I knew that in a few hours they'd be filled in and covered over by new snow, but at the moment, not only could we see tire tracks, but we were able to walk in them, which made the going a little easier. There's the house right there, I said, aiming the flashlight beam ahead of us. I can see the light on. In another minute or so, the trees on either side of the driveway thinned, and we entered the large yard where the house sat. Here, without the protection of the trees, the wind was stronger than ever. My cheeks that were so cold that they were no longer stung by the pounding of snow and ice. I think my face was numb. "Hey," Angela said, stopping. She pointed. "The light's on upstairs. That's a room on the 3rd floor. We weren't up there, were we?" "No," I said. "And we turned off all the lights anyway, except for the ones in the living room and the foyer." "Your dad must be up there," Angela said excitedly. "Maybe that's where he was all along. Maybe he didn't hear us because he was up on the 3rd floor." We stood for a moment, the snow and wind and pellets of ice whipping at us. We stared up through the blizzard. On the 3rd floor, a square of creamy light glowed through the storm. Downstairs on the 1st floor, light streamed out of the windows near the front door, and there was a faint light coming from the living room window too. But something wasn't right. I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't figure it out. Something just seemed odd, seemed off. The house seemed darker, moodier, and more ominous than it had before. "It's just dark because it's dark outside," I told myself. "When we got here earlier, it was during the daytime. Now it's dark, and it just looks different." I was staring directly at the glowing 3rd floor window when a dark silhouette came into view in the room. It was a human figure, and it stood in the middle of the window, as if was looking down on us. "It's him," Angela shouted. "It's your dad." She began waving wildly with both hands. "He can't see you," I said. "The glare from the light in the room reflecting off the glass inside will be too bright." "But he must know we're out here," she said. "He must know we're looking for him." Then another silhouette appeared in the window. Now there were 2 figures looking down at us. Angela stopped waving. The winter witch screamed in our ears, clawing at our faces and exposed skin with her frozen fingers. 2 figures in the window. That shouldn't be. There shouldn't be anyone else in the house besides Dad. Unless they're ghosts, I thought. "Can ghosts make shadows?" Angela shouted over the raging wind. "I don't know," I said, "but we're going to find out." "No, we're not," Angela said defiantly. "I changed my mind. We're not going back into that house." "We don't have any choice," Angela, I said. "Yes, we have coats and hats and boots and gloves, but with this wind, we won't stay warm for very long. My face is numb already. We'll freeze to death if we stay out here." "Quinn, I am not going back in that house." "You'll freeze to death," I repeated. "If you're like me, your cheeks are already frozen. We have to get inside where we can at least get out of the weather and get warm." This seemed to make sense to her. As much as I wasn't sure about going back inside the old house, we couldn't stay outside. My feet were already starting to get cold. "Come on," I said. "We'll be okay." I looked up as we started walking toward the house. In the window on the 3rd floor, the 2 dark silhouettes had vanished. Chapter 19. On the porch, the snow had already covered most of our footprints that we'd made only a short while before. Looking around, it looked like we'd already gotten about 10 inches of snow since it had started falling earlier in the day, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. The winter witch was still angry, shrieking in the night, casting her dark spell all across the land. I opened the front door and strode into the foyer. Angela followed and closed the door behind me, shutting off a blast of wind and snow. I turned off the flashlight. "Do you think that was your dad upstairs?" Angela asked. "I don't know," I said. "Right now, I'm likely to believe just about anything. We've already seen ghosts and a vanishing staircase. Speaking of..." I turned and looked into the closet. The staircase was gone. The secret passage was no longer there, and only a wall remained. But, Angela stammered. "I know," I said. "I can't make sense of it either." "Let's find your dad," Angela said with a shudder. "Let's find him and get out of here. I don't ever want to come back to this house again." "All right," I said. I sort of felt the same as Angela. It was almost funny when I thought about it. Earlier in the day, I thought my dad was silly and goofy for believing in ghosts. Now here I was, not only a believer in ghosts, but terrified by a haunted house. "Let's go up to that room," I said. "That was probably Dad up there." "But who was that other person?" Angela asked. "We were in the basement for a while," I said. "Maybe someone else showed up." But there isn't another car parked outside, Angela said, and no new footprints. Angela was right, of course, but we still had to go upstairs. We still had to investigate and find out if Dad was up there. The sooner we found him, the sooner we could go home. The sooner we'd be safe. We strode slowly down the hall, stopping when we reached the living room. It looked the same. To the left, the kitchen was empty. Everything appeared to be just as we'd left it. I even looked for Dad's phone, thinking maybe he'd set it down somewhere, but I didn't see it. Slowly, we walked across the living room to the stairs. At the foot of the staircase, I stopped, looked up, and listened. The only thing I could hear was the wind outside. The steps creaked as we made our way up to the second floor. There we paused for a moment and gazed down the dark hall. I turned on the flashlight and swept the beam through the corridor. Nothing. The stairs made a switchback turn and we continued up to the third floor, which opened to a long, dark hallway, lined with several closed doors. At the bottom of one of the doors, however, there was a bar of light. "There's a light on in that room," I whispered to Angela. "That's the room we saw from outside. The light's still on." We walked as quietly as we could in our boots, making our way down the hall, toward the closed door, toward the bar of light bleeding from beneath it. When we were directly in front of it, just inches away, we stopped. Beyond the door, we could hear noises coming from inside the room. I cleared my throat and then spoke. "Dad?" I said, my voice rising just a little bit. There was no reply, just the same faint shuffling and scuffing noises. "Dad, are you there?" Still no reply. Holding the flashlight in my gloved left hand, I reached out with my right and grasped the doorknob. It was weird. I could actually feel Angela tense up. I looked at her. She looked at me. There was fear in her eyes, and I knew she saw the same in mine. "Open it," she said quietly. "Let's get this over with. But let me just say that I think we're going to regret this." And as I turned the knob and slowly pushed the door open, I instantly realized that Angela was right.